How do you feel about having a coworker who's a machine as opposed to a person?
Don't really matter. It's less, you can't argue with it. It works the way you want it to.
You're watching a clip from a film that I made back in 1979. I'm David Hoffman, independent documentary filmmaker, bird by my side, and I put this set of clips together you're about to see from the film that I shot back then, which was an amazing moment in time. I mean, I got my first computer in 1990. Most people didn't have a personal computer. I think there were very few in the United States. And I'm going around the country as a two-man crew, 16 millimeter, shooting the old way, the industrial age, the new business, paperwork, the computer, the coming of the computer. People were just becoming aware that companies were getting computers and trying to deal with computers at that time. Imagine me as a two-man crew walking around these offices, huge buildings, huge companies, Sears and Roebuck and so many others, where I asked questions bluntly of employees and there were no PR people around, no one watching what they were saying. So they just told me what they think. That's what's so much fun about these clips. These are outtakes. The intakes I lost years ago, but I had a roll of outtakes in the basement which had these clips in it, these wonderful moments, these serendipitous moments, these intimate moments in a way, because people are just telling me what they think.
Do you ever feel that you're sinking under a mountain of forms or an ocean of...
At least once a week.
Tell
At
me.
least once
Tell
a
me.
week. We have so many forms, as you can see, that we could probably go into business ourselves.
Do you ever feel it's going to get out of control?
Always.
So you're going to see two montages. The first, ordinary people. The second, hotshots, big thinkers. And 1979, a tsunami was about to hit. The 1980s, the coming of the information age, the huge rise in computers. So this is just before that moment. Ordinary citizens and hotshot thinkers speculating on what the future will be.
How do you feel about having a coworker who's a machine as opposed to a person?
Don't really matter. It's less, you can't argue with it. It works the way you want it to. It does what it's supposed to do. It's better, it doesn't have to be paid either. That's good. Explaining this to them, it's better than walking around delivering the stuff. Saves a lot of time. Not much.
Problems.
It'll go offline and it's hard to start up again. See, there's like little tracks right down there. And it's got to be on the tracks or it'll stop and it won't go. It doesn't take long if you know what to do.
Well, that's sound to go with Igor. Give me some idea of where we are, how much stuff there is here, what it's used for, problems you have dealing with it all. Is there mountains of it?
We have over 600 items in this corporation, about 300 of them forms. We have problems every day, mountings of them.
Okay.
Well, we have the place open 2 hours each day, whereas the departments in our corporation can come down and pick up supplies and carry them out in their arms. At this time, we have all kind of questions like, no one knows the item number, wrong item numbers, wrong descriptions, you name it, we get it.
Run through, not all 300, but forms. What kind of forms do you have? Just name them, as many as you can. A long list of forms.
That's everything in the building. Everything is written on paper. If you make a phone call, you need to return it. It's written on a memo pad. If you want to have someone to do another job, you usually write it down maybe if the boss isn't around, if help isn't around.
Do you ever feel that you're sinking under a mountain of forms or an ocean of...
At least once a week. At least once a week. We have so many forms, as you can see, that we could probably go into business ourselves.
Do you ever feel it's going to get out of control?
Always. But so far, not yet.
Tell me how you feel about all the paper.
I could burn it. Is that good?
Do you think it would make any difference?
Oh yes, I would probably burn my paycheck.
If it's like this now, what's it going to be like 10 years from now?
Triple as many forms.
Okay, tell me.
Alone. Just paper. for everything, everybody, every department.
I'm going to tell you a word. You tell me what comes to your mind.
Okay.
Bureaucracy.
I couldn't say it. I'm not supposed to mention it, but that's what comes to my mind. Government?
Anything.
Government.
Good, bad, too much?
Bad and too much. That was a point-blank question.
Why aren't you supposed to answer it?
Well, the government wasn't the first thing that came to my mind, but the government was my second choice.
The first?
We're dealing with here 37,000 to 47,000 reports per year. Without the computer, we would not be able to find various persons, places, and incidents. Therefore, it is essential that we use the computer.
Do you ever get the feeling you're going to drown in paperwork or paper?
Definitely. Again, without the computer, we couldn't survive. The paper is very important to us. We need things on paper, but we need the computer to centralize everything for us.
A lot of people blame bureaucracy for our problems. How do you feel about that?
I believe they only have themselves to blame. Our society is functioning around everything that's going on instead of trying to keep up with it. Computers are the thing. They will be the thing of the future. We need them. Our records have gotten too extensive. Our population has grown too much. We need them. We need some sort of a central filing system.
Do you think it works better with all the new information and all the new computers and all the bureaucrats?
No, I don't like the bureaucrat part. I don't like politics entered into a government organization, and especially Social Security. It never seemed to be political up to this point, and I don't care to see it go political. I think things operate better without politics, especially in office where Social Security is serving the people. I think politics are better off someplace else.
Second sticks.
There are 400,000 computers in this country and about 400,000 more in the rest of the world. That is, there are 800,000 computers all told. Now, that's not counting those little devices which are built into the radar ovens. These are real computers, computers of this kind. The interesting number is that these 400,000 machines do the work of about 5 trillion people, 5 trillion clerical workers. The whole world has only a population of 4 billion people. These machines do the work of 1,000 times more people than the whole world has. Every technology that mankind has ever developed sort of rises sharply and then continues up and eventually sort of flattens out. Now, the technology curve usually is a curve that takes about 70 years. When you think of sailboats or of steamboats or of diesel boats or airplanes, whatever. Computers, we are still down here. We are still down here. We are on our way up to the real phenomenal impact of these machines. That is a future which is marvelous, where knowledge becomes instantaneously available to everybody at a touch of a button.
Head slate.
I suppose my gutsy response is to be romantic about an earlier period when things were slow. I can have fun recalling my early days when the only magazine that came into our house was National Geographic. I grabbed it and read it from cover to cover. We played radio. We didn't listen to radio. We had no TV. That seemed, in my memory bank, a kind of innocent, satisfying world. But intellectually, I know it's not for me. When I put aside my sentiment and come to my intellectual interpretation, I say, this is a magnificent world.
This will be a head slate.
And let's see, what were we on? I forgot what we were on.
Information is power, especially in the sense that it is available for those who are already powerful. And the great problem, one of the great problems I think we face, is that we don't know how to deliberately as a society move that power to the people who are powerless or who need more power to get fairness, equity, justice, and to redistribute the opportunities to make decisions in the society.
One has now the view that the class structure is divided as between those who have information and those who do not, those who have access to information and those who must function out of ignorance. I made this argument 20 years ago in the Affluent Society, arguing, the term was not original with me, that there was developing a new class in all of the democratic societies, which had its power as the result of its access not to money, not to property, but to knowledge. And this I believe to be the case. And I think there is a class division in modern society as between people who have access to information, access to knowledge, and those who do not. This is the reason why we have a certain angry reference to elites from time to time. This was, I suppose, part of the reason why Spiro Agnew, a man who no one would accuse of being excessively informed, expressed himself so angrily about the snobbish elites. It's not something to be accepted as inevitable, because it is a form of class distinction that can be eliminated by education, and I would suppose is part of the great modern case for more and better and more egalitarian educational opportunity.
If you look at society as simply the collective contribution of millions of human beings who carry in themselves certain power and influence and emotion, and every time you turn the switch off of one of those persons, you've dampened the glow. We cannot afford to increasingly see society controlled by a smaller and smaller group who deal with narrower and narrower specializations, because we not only distort and limit, we caricature what you might, in almost a spiritual sense, see the total beauty of the total contributions. So I see this not only as a matter of being kind to someone else in a kind of self-serving, sentimental way. It's the fundamental question of whether this society is going to find a way to make itself as rich and as powerful and, if you will, as beautiful as potentially it can be.
I suppose one has to wonder whether there hasn't been a breakdown in confidence in all institutions, and some will say, is there anything in which one can have confidence nowadays? Corporations are suspect, the government is suspect, the bureaucracy, universities, professions, lawyers. I must tell you that I worry less about this than most of my liberal friends, most of my conservative friends. When I first went to Harvard, longer ago than I like to think, 40 years ago, Harvard was in some ways a magic name. It was preeminently above criticism, even by certainly by its students, certainly by its alumni, and very substantial, and also by, for that matter, by its faculty. And it wasn't that good. A great many of our students, well, as I said many times, in the 40 years I've been at that university, it's transformed itself from a rather low-grade aristocracy to a somewhat imperfect meritocracy. And one of the reasons Harvard wasn't criticized in the 1930s, when it was changing over from a finishing school for the rich to a serious intellectual institution, was that it had a great many people around who weren't intellectually capable of criticism. there's much less confidence in the university now than there was then, and I regard this as a very much happier situation. But I would also say that we must continue to believe that things work. Some things work because they obviously they do. We get things done, life goes on, and this is something which I think we should continue to suppose will be so.
This is head slate, camera roll 20.
For most people, they experience the invasion of privacy in the form of junk mail or junk phone calls or threats to credit rating, which still are on the margins of their life. But supposing our political freedoms begin to be interfered with, as things are going, that could happen. And if that does happen, these information banks, these profiles of people, this completeness of documentation of everybody's life is a fearful potential threat. Information is the bloodstream of bureaucracy. It's the nerve center of bureaucracy. The thing that has saved us up to now is that the bureaucracies haven't been that efficient. Now, with this new information, they have a mechanism of control. That is what information is used for. The question arises, who is the information for? I think one of the things that causes people to feel uneasy is a feeling that the information is for everybody but the public, for everybody but the consumer, for every special interest, but not for the general interest, not for me, not for you, not for the people down the block, but for institutions to do their number. And their number is a number that is often is not done on me.
I suppose there's no question that is so often asked about information as to whether there is an inherent, a moral right to know. I would say, without the slightest hesitation, that there is a right to know. I've been in and out of public position a good part of my life, and I've said many times I've never made a mistake, I've never done something foolish without the thought immediately crossing my mind, I wonder if this could be kept out of public print. I wonder if somehow or other this could be, publicity on this could be avoided. I didn't always admit that to myself at the time. And most of the things that we have, most of the great mistakes of past years have been things that have been conducted without the illumination and without the discussion of the public and of the Congress. There are things on which a measure of confidentiality is appropriate, plans for negotiations, health of foreign statesmen, gossip of that sort, but very quickly this becomes public knowledge anyway. The time, the half-life of the needed secrecy is only a few days.
We're not fully into the office of the future. I'm sure there are some companies that are a little further ahead than we are, but we're getting there. We have, as a matter of fact, a word processing system in our headquarters, in our corporation office, that I guess is about as far ahead as any in the country, and that's just one small piece of the office of the future. But in this process of converting to the office of the future, and by that I simply mean that instead of sending letters on hard paper, on hard copy through the mails, we'll be sending them over electronic media. And instead of receiving that letter in your in-basket one day, you'll receive it on a TV screen on your tabletop. And instead of filing that letter in the file cabinet, it'll be filed in the computer. And you can pull it up whenever you wish to. If you want to review it, you push a button and there it appears.
As for the future of science, I think that if I were just starting, that I might like to try to tackle the last really big frontier that I know of, and that is how the mind works. It seems to me that's an area where it's very difficult to do very precise experiments particularly experiments on the single cell or molecular level. But it is an area where almost nothing is known. And if I had a lifetime to begin, I might begin there.